You wake up one day and realize nothing in your life has technically changed. Same job, same relationships, same routine. But you don't feel like the same person anymore. The jokes that used to make you laugh now feel empty. The conversations you used to tolerate suddenly drain you. The version of you who always knew how to behave in every situation now feels like a stranger wearing your face. And the worst part, you can't explain this to anyone without sounding dramatic. So you start to wonder, am I sabotaging my life? Am I becoming too sensitive? Am I just broken? What if the answer is the opposite? What if this discomfort is not a sign that you're falling apart, but proof that you're secretly leveling up? Carl Jung spent a lifetime studying this exact moment. The point where your soul starts pushing against the life you built just to survive. He called it the beginning of individuation. The process where your deeper self refuses to stay trapped in roles, masks, and expectations that no longer match who you are becoming. The first uncomfortable sign that you're secretly leveling up is simple and brutal. Your outer life starts to feel out of sync with your inner world. Nothing exploded. Nobody betrayed you. There was no dramatic plot twist. And yet your days feel wrong. Not disastrous. Just wrong. You sit in a meeting and watch yourself nod, smile, say the right things. But somewhere inside, a quiet voice whispers, "This is not who I am anymore." That gap between what you live and what you feel, that's where the upgrade begins. Carl Jung would say your persona is cracking. The persona is the social mask you wear so you can function in the world. The good employee, the cool friend, the easygoing partner. The version of you designed to be acceptable, safe, reasonable. At some point in your life, that mask was useful. It helped you belong. It kept you protected. It probably even helped you survive. But as your psyche moves toward individuation, the mask that once fit like armor starts to feel like a costume. You notice it in small, almost embarrassing ways. You can't force yourself to laugh at jokes that punch down anymore. You feel strangely exhausted after pretending to be fine in rooms where your soul is not. You catch yourself zoning out in conversations that used to excite you, as if your mind has quietly walked out of the door before your body does. It feels like you're betraying your old life. In reality, you're betraying your false self a little less each day. Jung would not call this laziness or ingratitude. He would call it truth, trying to break through habit. Because as your inner world becomes more honest, it stops cooperating with environments built on performance. You might notice a few things shifting. You start editing yourself less. You don't rush to fill every silence. You stop volunteering for roles you secretly resent. You feel a strange mixture of guilt and relief when you say no, where you used to automatically say yes. From the outside, it can look like you're pulling away. On the inside, you're making space for a self that doesn't need to be so heavily filtered to be tolerated. This is also why this phase hurts. There is grief in outgrowing a life that once felt like home. Part of you wants to go back. Back to the version of you who didn't question so much, who could just follow the script and not feel this constant friction. But once your inner world expands, your old outer life becomes too tight. Like wearing clothes that technically still fit, but make it hard to breathe. If you feel this misalignment right now, if your life looks fine on paper, but wrong in your body, it doesn't mean you're ungrateful or unstable. It means your soul has started the negotiation. The persona is no longer enough. And that's the first, quiet, deeply uncomfortable sign that you're not failing at life. You're being called to live it as who you really are. Once your outer life stops matching your inner world, the second sign appears. Your emotions stop behaving politely. You cry more easily. You get irritated by things you used to swallow. You feel waves of sadness, anger, or emptiness that you can't always explain. And your first instinct is to panic. Why am I like this? I should be stronger. I'm losing control. But Jung would say, You're not losing control. You're losing the illusion of control you built by suppressing yourself. When you start leveling up, the psyche doesn't send a polite email with the subject line, "You are now entering your next phase of growth." It sends chaos. Why? Because everything you pushed down to stay functional, the anger you never allowed, the grief you never sat with, the needs you always minimized, all of that starts to rise. In Jungian terms, this is the shadow coming to the surface. The shadow is not evil. It's simply everything about you that had to be rejected to keep the mask on. If your persona was the good girl, your shadow holds your rage, your boundaries, your no. If your persona was the strong one, your shadow holds your vulnerability, your exhaustion, your desire to be held. And when you're secretly leveling up, the shadow doesn't whisper. It storms. You might notice. You overreact to small things and then feel ashamed of your intensity. You feel resentment toward people you've always taken care of. You no longer have the energy to be fine all the time. Your body says, "I'm done," long before your mind is ready to admit it. On paper, this looks like you're becoming unstable. Internally, something much more intelligent is happening. Your system is refusing to carry emotions alone that were supposed to be shared, expressed, or released a long time ago. Jung believed that neurosis often appears when the psyche is trying to correct an imbalance, when one part of you has been overdeveloped, and another part has been exiled. And interestingly, modern voices echo this same truth. Researchers like Brené Brown have spent years studying vulnerability and emotional exposure, showing that what we label as breakdown is often the doorway into a more honest, courageous life. She reminds us that emotions are data, not proof that we're broken, signals pointing to what matters, what hurts, and what needs to change. Even high-energy teachers like Tony Robbins talk about emotional breakthroughs that are born from breakdown moments, that point where you can't keep living with the same patterns, because your nervous system is done pretending they don't cost you anything. Jung would simply go one step deeper and say, this turbulence is your shadow knocking. It's your deeper self refusing to let you live on autopilot anymore. So if you've spent years being overly reasonable, excessively polite, self-sacrificing to keep the peace, don't be surprised if your upgrade begins with anger, frustration, or an almost physical urge to stop abandoning yourself. It feels messy. It feels wrong. But it's a sign of life. Think of it like this. You've been holding a beach ball underwater for years, smiling, functioning, telling yourself, it's fine, I can handle it. The moment you get tired, the moment you loosen your grip, even slightly, that beach ball doesn't gently float to the surface. It shoots up, fast, awkward, splashing everything around it. That's your shadow when you're leveling up. Of course it's uncomfortable. Of course it's confusing. Of course part of you wants to push it all back down and go back to normal. But the real question, in Jung's language and in modern psychology, is not, what's wrong with me? It's, what truth in me refuses to stay buried any longer? Because every time you force yourself to be smaller, quieter, easier, you might be winning peace on the outside, but you're losing yourself on the inside. This emotional turbulence you're feeling now is not random drama. It is your psyche saying, I will no longer let you negotiate your truth away just to keep the old life intact. And as these emotions rise, they don't just change how you feel. They start to change what you accept. And that's when your relationships begin to shift in ways you can't ignore. This is one of the most painful signs that you're secretly leveling up. Your inner upgrade starts to rearrange your outer connections. At first, it's subtle. You feel a little out of sync with certain people. You leave some conversations feeling strangely empty or drained. You catch yourself thinking, we don't really talk about anything real, do we? Then the gap widens. You stop replying as fast. You say no more often. You don't have the same appetite for gossip, drama, or emotional chaos. And suddenly, the people who fed on that version of you, the endlessly available you, the always listening you, the I'll drop everything for you, start to feel distant. Some get quieter. Some get colder. Some accuse you of changing, as if it were a crime. Carl Jung would say you are withdrawing energy from old complexes and patterns. A complex, in simple terms, is like an emotional program that takes over your behavior in certain situations. You don't think. You just react. Maybe your pattern was the rescuer. You answer messages at midnight because they need you. You cancel your own plans to comfort someone who never asks how you are. You feel responsible for fixing everyone's bad mood, even at your own expense. Or maybe your pattern was the peacekeeper. You laugh off rude comments to keep things light. You smooth over every family conflict so no one gets upset. You say it's fine, don't worry about it, while your chest is tight and your stomach knots. Or maybe you played the entertainer. You tell stories, make jokes, keep the vibe high so no one feels awkward. You perform being okay, even when you're exhausted. You fear that if you're quiet or serious, people will lose interest and walk away. These roles can look kind, generous, easygoing, but they often come with a hidden price. You disappear a little every time you play them. When your psyche starts leveling up, it stops wanting relationships, where your value is tied to how much of yourself you can sacrifice. This is where the uncomfortable truth shows up. Some people didn't love you. They loved the version of you that made their life easier. So when you stop over-explaining, over-giving, over-apologizing, they don't recognize you anymore. From their perspective, you're becoming cold, distant, selfish. From the perspective of your deeper self, you're finally stepping out of relationships that required you to abandon yourself. You might notice things like, you feel guilty for not being as emotionally available as before, even though you are exhausted. You start questioning friendships that only revolve around crisis, complaining, or comparison. You realize some people never ask how you are unless you're useful to them. You feel more peace alone than in certain social circles that once felt like home. Jung spoke about projections, the way we unconsciously assign roles to people and let them play parts in our inner drama. When you level up, you begin to withdraw those projections. You stop being the hero in someone else's story. You stop accepting the role of the villain when you set a boundary. You stop auditioning for love that asks you to shrink. And when you no longer play along, those relational scripts fall apart. It hurts, not just because people might leave, but because you see, sometimes for the first time, what you were willing to tolerate just to not be alone. This is where many people turn back. They feel the loss, the loneliness, and decide the price is too high. Fine, they think. I'll go back to the old me. At least then I had company. But the old you is not there anymore. Once your psyche has tasted authenticity, pretending becomes unbearable. So instead of interpreting this phase as, everyone is leaving me, consider this. People who only knew how to connect with you, through your lack of boundaries, will naturally drift away when you stop bleeding for them. The ones who remain, or who arrive later, will be the ones who can sit with you in your wholeness, not just your usefulness. From a Jungian lens, this is part of the individuation journey. Your relationships shift from being built on unconscious need and fear to being built on mutual recognition and respect. It's slower, it's quieter, it's less crowded, but you are less crowded inside, too. If you are in this place now, where your phone is not as busy, your circle is smaller, and your evenings feel strangely open, it might not be a sign that you're failing socially. It might be a sign that life is gently removing the noise, so you have space to hear your own voice. There comes a point in this inner shift where the drama slows down, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you stop chasing every noise. It's the quiet pull toward authenticity, solicitude, and depth. You notice it in the small spaces. On a Friday night, the old version of you would have said yes automatically. To every invitation, every distraction, every chance to stay busy. Now, you catch yourself choosing something else. Closing the door, making tea, opening a book, or just sitting there, thinking, feeling, breathing. It doesn't look impressive from the outside, but inside, something fundamental is changing. Jung would say that, in these quieter moments, the self, the deeper organizing center of your psyche, is finally getting room to speak. The conversations you crave are not about who did what, who posted what, who achieved what. You want to talk about why you're here, what matters, what hurts, what you secretly dream about at 3 a.m. You may notice your tolerance for pretend normal dropping. You feel it when you're in a group and everyone is scrolling, joking, staying on the surface, and a part of you feels completely alone in the middle of it. You open social media and feel more numb than entertained. You walk away from certain interactions asking yourself, why does this feel so empty? At the same time, you start to feel unusually nourished by simple things. A walk without your phone, music that matches your mood instead of covering it, a long shower where your thoughts are finally allowed to complete themselves. It can be confusing because the world keeps saying, stay visible, stay busy, stay productive. But something in you is drawn to the opposite. To be honest, to be present, to be real. This is not you becoming boring. This is you learning to be with yourself without needing constant escape. Jung believed that individuation requires a certain kind of inner solitude, not isolation from the world, but a willingness to step back from the noise long enough to hear what is actually true for you. In this phase, you might notice a few quiet upgrades. You start journaling, not because someone told you to, but because your mind feels crowded and the page feels like oxygen. You find yourself revisiting books, movies, or ideas that once went over your head, and now somehow they resonate. You feel a pull toward psychology, spirituality, philosophy, or any path that helps you make sense of what's moving inside you. The outside world may interpret this as you pulling away or acting different, but somewhere beneath the doubt, that you're not running from people. You're moving toward yourself. And here's the uncomfortable part. The more you walk in that direction, the less tolerance you have for half versions of your own truth. You catch yourself stopping mid-sentence when you realize you're about to say what's expected instead of what you mean. You hesitate before agreeing to plans that you already know will drain you. You choose not to explain every boundary, not to defend every decision, not to justify every instinct, not out of arrogance, but out of a new respect for the life you're building inside. This quiet pull toward authenticity, solitude, and depth is one of the clearest signs that you're leveling up. Because when entertainment no longer sedates you, when busyness no longer impresses you, when noise no longer distracts you, what's left is you. You with your thoughts, you with your history, you with the future you're brave enough to consider. And it's usually in this space, simple, unglamorous, honest, that the next sign begins to appear. Small, precise moments where life seems to answer you back, through dreams, intuition, and coincidences that don't feel like coincidences at all. You start to notice timing. You think about a question, and almost by accident you open a video, a book, or a post that says exactly what you needed to hear. You wake up from a dream that feels less like random imagination and more like a message. You walk into a place, and before you can give yourself a logical explanation, your body has already decided. This doesn't feel right. From the outside, nothing looks magical. Inside, it feels as if something is secretly coordinating the details. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to link your inner world with what happens outside of you. From a purely logical point of view, they're easy to dismiss as chance, algorithms, or pattern seeking. But when you're secretly leveling up, these coincidences start to cluster around your moments of change, like the universe drawing a circle around certain experiences and whispering, "Pay attention here." You start to get the sense that life is not just happening to you, but moving with you. Call it life, call it the universe, call it something larger than your conscious mind. Whatever name you use, it feels as if this bigger intelligence is gently rearranging people, places, and moments to nudge you in the direction you're secretly ready to go. It's not about everything suddenly becoming easy. It's about the right sentence showing up on the worst day, the right opportunity appearing just after a painful ending, the right truth landing the moment you were about to betray yourself again. At the same time, your dreams begin to shift. They become more vivid, more emotionally charged, more symbolic. You might find yourself wandering through an old house that looks familiar but has new rooms you've never seen before, as if your psyche is saying, there are parts of you haven't discovered yet. You might dream of carrying heavy bags you're desperate to put down, or of water in all its forms, waves, floods, deep oceans, calm lakes, mirroring the emotional tides you're living through while awake. You don't need to decode every image like a puzzle. Just noticing what repeats can be powerful. Certain places, people, emotions, or symbols show up again and again, like your unconscious trying different ways to deliver the same message. Your intuition also starts to feel less like a vague idea and more like a concrete signal. It's that quick inner yes or no that shows up before your mind starts creating excuses. You walk into a room and instantly sense the emotional climate. You meet someone and something in you already knows if this connection feels safe, shallow, nourishing, or draining. You're about to say yes to a plan, and your body tightens just enough for you to notice a quiet, "Don't do this to yourself again." In the past, you may have overridden this inner response. You chose what was polite, what was expected, what made sense on paper. You stayed, agreed, or complied even when something inside you was quietly backing away. Now, after everything you've moved through, the misalignment with your old life, the emotional turbulence, the shifts in your relationships, the pull toward authenticity, ignoring your intuition doesn't feel harmless anymore. It feels expensive. You begin to understand that your body was speaking long before your mind was ready to listen. Your dreams were processing truths your waking self wasn't ready to face. Life itself, or the universe if you prefer, was answering questions you hadn't been able to put into words yet. You still doubt. You still question. You still have moments of confusion. But the way you relate to uncertainty changes. Instead of forcing a decision immediately, you start to watch what keeps coming back. A thought you can't shake. A feeling you can't numb. A sign, a phrase, a symbol that shows up again and again at the exact moment you're tempted to go back to your old patterns. From Jung's perspective, leveling up is not about becoming some enlightened figure who never struggles. It is about recognizing that you are in a living dialogue with your own unconscious, and in ways we don't fully understand, with the universe around you. So if you've been feeling that life is speaking to you lately through timing, dreams, or subtle inner nudges, you're not losing your mind. You're being invited to treat your inner experience as real, to trust your perception instead of constantly gaslighting yourself, to consider that all these signs, taken together, are not random noise, but the same message repeated in different languages. You cannot stay who you were and become who you are. At the same time, if you look at everything we've walked through, your life feeling out of sync, your emotions getting louder, your relationships shifting, your craving for depth, and the subtle sense that life is speaking to you, it all points in one direction. You're not falling apart, you're changing levels. From a Jungian view, this is what happens when your deeper self refuses to live inside an old story. The mask, the roles, the overgiving, the pretending, they simply stop working. Never the same again isn't a threat. It's a description of what happens when you stop abandoning yourself just to keep the peace. So here's the real question. If you believe these uncomfortable signs were proof that you're secretly leveling up, what is one thing you would stop forcing? And what is one small, honest step you would take next? If this spoke to you, tell me in the comments which sign you're living the most right now. And subscribe to Hidden Mind so you don't have to walk this phase of your life alone.